This is the Georgia Farm Monitor. Since 1966, your source for state and national agribusiness news, and features for farmers and consumers about Georgia's #1 industry, agriculture. The Georgia Farm Monitor is produced by the state's largest general farm organization, the Georgia Farm Bureau. Now, here are your hosts, Ray DeLessio and Kenny Burgamy.
Yes, that's right. We are your hosts, and it's our job to bring you all the latest happenings in Georgia agriculture. Welcome to the show, everybody. I'm Ray DeLessio.
And I'm Kenny Burgamy. Here's what's coming up for you. It's a unique look at what anglers call one of their favorite fish. Join us as we travel to Hawkinsville, Georgia, for an inside look at why farm-raised catfish is in high demand. Also on the program, getting produce to the consumer via airmail and the internet. David Jones on how one Georgia company is cashing in on this popular trend.
And then later, Ranger Nick heads to the airport not for traveling purposes, but to get an inside look at how officials at Hartsfield-Jackson Atlanta International Airport are controlling the threat of wildlife on the runways. These stories and so much more starting right now on the Georgia Farm Monitor. A quick check of the calendar, you'll see that August is National Catfish Month, a species that in recent survey ranked only behind bass, panfish, and trout in popularity among U.S. anglers. It's also a fish that Brian Simmons, CEO of Owen & Williams Fish Farm, says is extremely versatile and crafty.
Everybody's just impressed with the size of them. You know, they can range up to 25 or even 30 pounds in recreational farm ponds. You know, grow bigger than like that in the reservoirs and the rivers, but just about anybody, you know, can grow one 15 to 20 pounds. And people are just always amazed by the big fish. First, they've been domesticated for a longer period of time than just about any of your warm water fish. So they've been raised a little bit longer. We know a little bit more about the breeding habits, about the spawning habits, and how to raise them. They just, it's so much different than the scale fish, your bass and the brim. You know, their longevity is a little bit longer, and they just seem to do so much better in these farm ponds. The farm in Hawkinsville, there's 300 acres roughly of land. There's 38 ponds and about 50 acres of production as far as the water goes. We start just about all of our small fish up here and then move them to our larger grow out facility in Baker County. We normally raise or normally hatch 2 to 3 million catfish a year. Our normal recreation market is from 750,000 to 1 million fish just to go to backyard farm ponds. We raise a 3 to 5 inch fish and a 5 to 7 inch fish. So nothing that we raise catfish wise is really big enough to eat. Back in the late 90s and early 2000s, there was a processing plant that was planned to go in and around the Louisville area, and there was a big group of farmers up there. They had put in almost 500 acres of water. And, you know, they were going to grow a tremendous number of catfish. Normal stocking rates would be 8,000 to 10,000 per acre. So, you know, if you figure 500 acres, that was a lot of catfish. Well, the processing plant just never really panned out. So some of those farmers have put the fields back into cotton and peanuts. So it's still a big industry, just not quite as big without a processing plant as it could be. People love to eat them. It's a real mild, fleshy taste, but people also like when they stock them in the ponds. They like to go feed them in the mornings and in the afternoons. Their feeding activity on the surface is really good. The catfish get big in ponds. They're really good. They're efficient. They will feed on just about whatever's available, but if floating catfish feed is something there that's they really kind of treat that as candy. They can easily convert 2 pounds of fish feed into 1 pound of fish flesh. So they're pretty efficient.
Obviously, people want to know, especially if they're going to go out and catch catfish, you've heard about bacon, you've heard of hot dogs, you've heard of everything. What is the preferential food for catfish and the best bait that you can use to catch catfish?
Anything from worms to chicken livers. Again, catfish are omnivores. You know, they will eat pretty much whatever's available. Whatever bait that you wouldn't mind eating, if you catch enough fish and you have some left, is what I'd recommend.
Moving on from stuff we catch to things we pick. It's literally taking produce from the field to the fork. Lewis Taylor Farms in Tifton is now boxing up their produce and shipping directly to their consumers. Damon Jones tells you all about the Spring Hill Fresh program and how it got started.
Looking to avoid the hassle of fighting crowds and waiting in line at your local grocery or convenience store? Lewis Taylor Farms in Tifton is making things a little easier with their Spring Hill Fresh program that gets their produce straight to the consumers by delivering these boxes of their freshly picked fruits and vegetables to location hubs across South Georgia.
I wanted to be able to get produce to the public instead of just at the grocery stores. And so this gave me this idea. I came and I thought, what a better way than to have quick, easy, convenient delivery services to pick up fresh produce weekly for your family.
Not only is it convenient, but it also gives the consumers a quality product for less money by cutting out the middleman.
One, you're getting fresher produce. You know where your food is coming from, which should be a huge selling point for most people. And two, you're getting a better price. You're getting from us basically what the grocery store pays for their produce. We are taking fresh produce from our farm and from other source farms here in South Georgia and boxing them for weekly produce boxes that go out to different communities here, Tifton, Valdosta, Thomasville, and hopefully soon Tallahassee.
And with Lewis Taylor Farm growing a little bit of everything, these boxes will have plenty of variety.
Every week, there's different produce in the box. We don't want things to become redundant or, get boring, so we do change it up. We do different produce. We do, usually we keep the box to 4 to 5 vegetables and 2 fruits per week.
With nutrition being a major issue with kids, having fresh, accessible produce around at all times is becoming a real priority for the parents.
It's there for them to snack on instead of, junk food or whatever else. And I know for my children too, it's a great thing to have that apple or those peaches on the counter instead of a cookie in the drawer.
While this is a relatively new program, it is easy to get more information and even sign up for.
All you have to do is go to our website, www.springhillfresh.net. And if you look at the menu, there's a link in there that says join us. If you click on that, it takes you through 5 quick steps and you're in, and that's it.
And so far, the reception has been positive, which gives Kirk the hopes that it will be expanding.
And just in the Tifton area alone, we have over 150 families that have signed up to get fresh produce. And we have been working closely with our hospital, so we can use this as a healthy initiative for them to make sure that people understand how important it is to eat fresh produce and not just go and buy things that, quick meals at fast food places.
Unlike other programs like this, there are no long-term commitments, as you can go week by week.
There's no minimum, there's no time there's no contract, so you don't have a certain amount that you have to get. And what we want is we want to prove to you that we can provide you with a good service and good produce.
Reporting from Tifton, I'm Damon Jones for the Georgia Farm Monitor.
When we come back, Ranger Nick with exclusive access. How officials at Atlanta's airport are using high-tech equipment to control wildlife and potential bird strikes on airplanes.
I'm Brad Chandler, Director of Live Operations with FPL Food in Augusta, Georgia. We are the largest privately owned, fully integrated processing facility in the Southeast. We process approximately 5,500 cows, bulls, and fed cattle each week. We see the quality of cattle that are in the Southeast and know that we can grow the corn, we can grow the forages that those cattle need to grow and to finish out at the appropriate weights, and that's more of our focus on this operation now, that to showcase what can be done with the genetics of the Southeastern cattle and how it can help the industry in the Southeast. At this operation, we take cattle that are weaned off of the cow, preferably 45 to 60 days. We keep them in our grow yard for 10 to 12 weeks until they reach about 800 pounds, and then we move them into the barns where we finish them to 12 to 1,300 pounds. If we can take the cattle that we have here and keep them in the Southeast, it greatly reduces the carbon footprint by using all the waste that we have here back directly on the the crops that we're growing, that also reduces the need for chemical and commercial fertilizers. This is the only facility like this with this design in the Southeast.
Now to someone who always leaves a lasting impression, and that's Ranger Nick.
Yep. For this episode, he made his way through security checks, travel delays, and somehow ended up where very few people are allowed to go.
Well, I tell you what, this gig gets me in some pretty amazing places. And today I'm standing right along a runway at the world's most traveled airport, the Hartsfield-Jackson Atlanta International Airport. And standing with me today is Mr. Stephen Boyd, and he is the wildlife biologist here at the airport. The folks here at Atlanta do an amazing job managing all the two-legged creatures that come through its doors every day. But I want to talk a little bit about the non-people individuals that come through here, and that's the wildlife, and that's why I'm here with Stephen. Stephen, what are some of the kinds of wildlife that would even visit an airport like this and a habitat like we're standing in today?
All types of wildlife, but we predominantly deal with birds. We also deal with terrestrial mammals, bats, even bats. But predominantly, like I said, birds, and we try to mitigate that. We try to mitigate the hazard involved in aircraft moving, birds moving. Yeah. They both fly.
Yeah.
So we try to make sure that they don't collide with one another.
And this place is nearly 5,000 acres of land that's here at this airport, and we're standing amongst a bunch of grass, taller grasses out here. This is a habitat for wildlife, and folks like Stephen are in charge of mitigating some of that habitat. I want to talk a little bit about how they go about doing that, and I think you're going to be amazed at some of the advanced technological techniques they use to take care of those animals. Now, what you just heard there was yet another technique that folks like Stephen are using here at the airport to deter wildlife. Stephen, tell us about this contraption that we're standing next to today.
This is a propane cannon with an audible distress call on it with 20 speakers. You heard how loud it was. The speakers are about 125 decibels. The actual cannon report itself is 130 decibels. So this is used to essentially scare birds from the airport environment to mitigate wildlife hazards here at Atlanta.
Absolutely, and some of the calls for our folks at home that are real bird fans, some of the calls were of predatory birds. So those are some birds like red-tailed hawks and other things that are being played through the speaker to deter that wildlife in a very safe way. I've seen these contraptions outside of an airline window many times, but never thought that that is what this is being used for, to deter wildlife. Incredible. So how about this, Stephen? I'm standing at the world's most traveled airport on a runway that is currently closed right now. It's springtime, many more people are traveling now. Wildlife are also traveling. I heard that 2014 was an unprecedented year for wildlife and aircraft strikes. Talk to us a little about that.
Yes, over 13,500 strikes were recorded in 2014. Here in Atlanta, we also saw a rise in strikes, but the common misconception is that a lot of strikes is bad. We're concerned with damaging strikes, so a lot of damaging strikes is bad, but non-damaging strikes provide data it's tools. It provides me with tools to mitigate the hazards that are out on the airfield. There may have been a potential for damage. We're trying to mitigate that in the future.
And look at all the things that you're talking about doing out here, whether it's from fencing to habitat mitigation to the sounds and the propane cannons. Amazing things that are being done to work in harmony with some of these animals. Well, probably the most infamous wildlife strike of an airplane happened, the Miracle on the Hudson. And that was, of course, associated with what kind of wildlife, Stephen?
Canada geese.
So Canada geese, an obvious concern out here at the Atlanta airport and all major airports, but what are some of the other kinds of wildlife that folks like you are concerned about in terms of running into aircraft?
Yeah, usually people associate wildlife strikes with larger birds like Canada geese, but we deal with smaller birds on a regular basis. European starlings are one of the most abundant birds that we deal with out here at the Hartsfield-Jackson. And we're standing underneath a piece of the ILS equipment now that you can see exclusion devices that we've installed to keep birds like European starlings off of them. With their perching on these structures, they actually interfere with pilot instrumentation. So just another technique that we use out here to mitigate wildlife hazards.
And I don't think that folks at home realize when they look out the window of that airplane that these things exist and that folks like Stephen are out there looking out for wildlife and trying to deter them from this area. Talked about European starlings, talked about Canada geese. What about mammals out here?
White-tailed deer. We deal with white-tailed deer. Canines like coyotes.
Yeah.
Believe it or not, here in Atlanta we have coyotes.
I've seen them. I've been leaving the airport here in Atlanta and seeing coyotes myself. So they're after the food associated that would live out here. Incredible. Well, wasn't this something today? Wildlife management, plain and simple. We talked about techniques for mitigating those wildlife, whether it's through fences or things that are on some of the towers at the airport. We talked about some of the ways that they're using propane cannons to control these things. It's amazing to see the effort that the airport's going through to look out for wildlife. Next time you're in a plane, look out the window and pay attention to some of the things near you that are being done to look out for those critters. Well, y'all know what to do. Go online and like the Georgia Farm Monitor Facebook page, and while you're there, slide on over to the Ranger Nick page and like that. You know I love it when y'all do that. And until next time, remember, as I always say, enthusiasm is contagious, so pass it on. From the airport here in Atlanta, I'm Ranger Nick. Looking forward to seeing you right back here again next month. See ya.
Great job, Nick. Thank you so much. Native grasses make excellent forage for cattle farmers. We all know that. Well, now there's increasing evidence these grasses are also good for the soil. That story when the Farm Monitor continues.
A beef herd grazes contentedly at UT's Ag Research Center in Spring Hill. But before these cows can enjoy their breakfast, hay must grow. And that's where fertile ground comes in, producing this lush pasture of fescue grass.
We're blessed to have fescue. Fescue has its place, but we also, being proper managers of our forage, need to pull them off those fescue pastures and go to other things that can better serve the nutrient requirements of our beef cattle herds.
So what else would be good for cattle to eat? This land also includes big blue stem forage and switchgrass, native grasses being studied by UT's Institute of Agriculture. The research looks at improving the nutritional value of the forage, the economic benefits to farmers, and how native grasses thrive even in low-nutrient soils.
This research project is happening here in Spring Hill on some of Tennessee's richest farmland and 3 other locations across the state. UT experts say it's important to monitor these native grasses over time, and this project is funded through 2020.
Dr. Pat Kaiser is director of UT's Center for Native Grasslands Management and leader of this study.
And what we're seeing from our research is that these native grasses make an awful lot of sense. That they produce a lot, cattle like them, they provide excellent gains, but they also get by on very low fertility.
Kaiser says some of these grasses are just a foot tall but have roots that go down 8 or 9 feet. Those roots, in turn, create an underground civilization, putting organic matter and carbon out, which is good for soil biodiversity.
Yeah, you know, one of the things that we've learned about healthy soils is that it's all about organic matter, and more specifically, it's about roots. Roots is where the life in the soil congregates. It's like the rivers, the streams, the ponds of the underground world.
These native grasses should keep growing through the end of August. We're talking cows here, but it's a classic chicken or the egg argument. Which comes first, the good ground or the healthy forage? Regardless, research shows they go together nicely. This is Charles Denny reporting.
Filing today, something special from our friends at the Georgia Peanut Commission.
It's up close and personal look at someone who takes a lot of pride in being a good steward of the land.
I'm Mike Newberry. This is Arlington, Georgia, and we're in Early County. This is Hillside Farms, and I'm the 4th generation here on the farm. My daddy is still here with us, and we grow corn, cotton, and peanuts, and also have a beef cattle operation. Well, this farm, we're where we are now is the central part of the farm. It's the original part. As a matter of fact, this little community was Hillside, and that building right there was actually the Hillside Baptist Church that closed in the 50s. We originally, we had hogs on this farm until about 30 years ago, 25, 30 years ago. And we've always grown peanuts, corn, and cotton. We went through a period of not growing cotton, but we began growing cotton again in the 80s. Particularly looking at the peanut industry, when you look at agriculture in our county, just think about all the parts of the industry that are here. All the crop protection products that we need are sold here. Our seed are here. Our equipment is all here. We can buy it all here. We can sell our crop here. It can get shelled here. It can get blanched here, and it can get processed here. So just think about how many people that means that are involved in agriculture. Think about all that tax structure that involves. So yeah, agriculture is super important in these small communities, and particularly peanuts in a county like ours. The Farm Bill smooths out the rough spots. It allows us to continue some reasonable level of production when prices are depressed, so that food supply remains constant in our country. And they function very well for that. We forget that sometimes. They're not farm bills. They're really food security bills, and we forget that. We lose focus of that. We haven't done a good job of marketing that to the American public, I don't think. It's all those bills are designed to provide a safe and secure and adequate food supply and fiber supply for our country, not necessarily to prop up the farmer. I enjoy being outside. I enjoy the freedom that we have as farmers, even though once we get started in the planting season, it really gets busy, because once we start having a crop here, then we have to start irrigating it, and that's the hard thing about this now is keeping the irrigation going. For someone that might be interested in going into farming, I would tell you to study hard. That doesn't necessarily mean to be in college, but it means to learn everything that you can about this field. You're going to have to work awful hard, and one of the mistakes people make is don't realize how involved their family is going to have to be in what they do. This is not an 8-to-5 job. It's not a job where you can make plans and always be able to fulfill those plans. Sometimes you have to change on the go, and it takes an awful lot of family flexibility to do that. I learned long ago that telling the agricultural story is very important. We assume everybody understands what we do. But now more than ever in my lifetime, there's a lot of misinformation about what we do, particularly about our crop protection products. GMOs have become such a buzzword now, so misunderstood. And I learned a long time ago also, if you want to tell the story, you better tell it so that you can make sure it got told right. Don't be afraid to tell it yourself, because you may be the one that knows the story best.
All right, great job by the Georgia Peanut Commission, and a huge thank you for allowing us to share that story. Unfortunately, though, that is going to do it for this edition of the Georgia Farm Monitor.
And here's a reminder for all the latest ag info regarding food-grade recipes and what's happening down on the farm. Be sure and check out our Twitter, Facebook, and Pinterest pages. You'll stay informed and see what's up in the world of farming and with us at the show.
Take care, everybody. We'll see you next week right here on the Georgia Farm Monitor.
As always, have a great week.